Hey everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now I've been so excited about the Canon RF 100 to 400mm lens that I wanted to make another video about it because I got a really good chance to go out with my friend Carmen, and that's another thing that I wanted to mention. My friend Carmen is my first subscriber from my YouTube channel that I actually met in real life. He reached out to me and we now go birding regularly together, and it's been a lot of fun. And Carmen called me and he said, "Hey man, do you want to go birding this weekend?" And I said, "Absolutely," because I've had the Canon RF 100 to 400mm lens and I haven't really got to properly test it out yet. So I got a really good chance and I got some really nice shots of a juvenile eagle that let me get pretty close in on it. Now, I'm not going to tell you where it is because I've sworn to secrecy. Carmen told me I'm not allowed to tell people where we're going to get these shots. So you can ask me all you want, but I cannot tell you, unfortunately, and I'm sorry for that. But I was able to get very sharp, very nice images out of the Canon RF 100 to 400mm lens. Now, I held off getting this lens initially because when you look at it on paper, you know, it's f8, it's not weather sealed. At the time I was using the Tamron 100 to 400 and that is weather sealed and that shoots at f6.3. So right away you're like, wow, that's really slow. I'm losing a lot of light. It's not weather sealed. So on paper, it just wasn't that impressive, and right away I just dismissed it. And that was a big mistake. And I'm really happy that I was wrong about this because that was a big mistake for me to hold off getting this lens. Now, f8, of course, we knew this was going to be a very light lens, but honestly, guys, this is like a lot lighter than I really expected it to be. Even though it's a little bit longer than, say, even like my RF 24 to 240, it's still a significant amount lighter. This thing is like carrying around the 70 to 300mm lens. Like, it's really that small, and it's really that light. You don't even really feel like you're using a telephoto 400mm lens. And that's what makes this lens so special. It is insanely easy to handhold and shoot with this thing. I can handhold for hours without having my arms get tired. And that's a huge advantage to this because then you're able to get really tack sharp shots by having a very stable stance. Now, the other thing is the stabilization works really, really well in tandem with the IBIS from my Canon R6. And then you've got really good image quality as well. Like, it's f8. I'm not going to say the bokeh is the best thing in the world, but the images that came out of this thing were super, super sharp. And I'm extremely happy with them, especially when I was photographing this juvenile eagle. I also got some really nice shots of this blue heron in flight, which made me really happy. And honestly, like, I just am so happy with this lens. Being so light, so small, and so easy to just kind of carry around with me. It's really like an extra special lens that even when I do eventually save up and when I do buy the RF 100 to 500mm lens, that sucker's heavy. I looked at it a while ago. I want to say it's around 5 pounds, and that's crazy heavy. This thing is light, guys, and very easy to bring around. And don't discount it just because it might not be that impressive on paper like I did, because you're still going to be able to get really, really nice shots. And the fact that, you know, the R sensors are doing so well with high ISO values now, you don't have to be as afraid of f8 as we used to be. So once I kind of let go of that and I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a try, I honestly love this thing. It's on my camera all the time, and it takes beautiful images. On paper, it's really not that impressive of a lens, but honestly, once I got past that and I did give this lens a try, this is now one of my favorite lenses to have on my camera. This thing is literally amazing. It's super sharp, the image quality is really, really good, and the stabilization works awesome with my IBIS from my Canon R6. The fact that this thing is so small and so light means that it's really, really easy to shoot with. Like, insane amounts easier to shoot with than any other telephoto 100 to 400mm lens that I've ever used. Now, I was using a Tamron 100 to 400mm lens, which I love, and I'm going to be honest, I do prefer the image quality that comes out of the Tamron EF 100 to 400mm lens a little more than the image quality that comes out of this. I do find that this is probably a little bit sharper, but I just like the way that the colors and the overall image look from the Tamron glass. But that being said, the overall keeper rate or the hit rate that you're going to get because of the autofocus system from the Nano USM motors that are running the autofocus in this lens are going to make you get way more keepers, and I mean way more. Like, it almost feels like cheating more. That's how good it's going to be. This lens performs insanely well. It's very light, and the things that you do sacrifice, weather sealing and aperture, are easily worth it in my opinion. Now, the sacrifices that you'll make using this lens are going to be that you don't have weather sealing and that it is going to limit you to f8 so you're going to have to shoot with higher ISOs. But the fact that you now have really good ISO performance from the new sensors coming from Canon is going to mitigate that issue. Honestly, having this on my R6 is just such a nice lightweight combo. It doesn't even feel like I'm using a 100 to 400 millimeter lens, and I just love having it with me. The images that come out of it are awesome, guys. Like, I was sitting there shooting this juvenile eagle, just getting awesome, awesome images. Honestly, some of the best images that I've ever gotten out of it. And it made me extremely happy, and it showed me just how special this cheap, affordable lens really is. And I have to say, like, honestly, I could not be happier with this little affordable lens. Look how small it is. This thing is so light, you don't even feel like you're using a 400 millimeter focal length lens, but you're getting that reach. And on my Canon R6, the combination honestly feels a little bit magical. Like, I'm getting amazing shots out of it. I love how reliable the autofocus system is in this. The Nano USM motors are just awesome, guys. So fast and so accurate to lock onto my target that I'm just getting almost all keepers here, and I'm just loving the performance out of this lens. Now, initially I held off getting this lens because of the f8 aperture and the fact that it wasn't weather sealed. I was at the time using the Tamron EF weather sealed and 6.3 aperture lens, and to me, I felt like this lens was going backwards when I looked at the specs. But honestly, now that I use it, I love this lens so much more. It's sharper, it has better and more accurate autofocus, it has superior stabilization. I do think that, honestly, the image quality was a little bit better when you did get a really nice shot out of the Tamron glass, and I do really appreciate having weather sealing. That's something that I do miss about this lens, is not having weather sealing, because obviously if I'm out in the woods, I'm going to be out in the weather sometimes. So that is something where, you know, once it starts to rain, you're done. It's got to go in the bag, which kind of stinks. But the f8 aperture hasn't held me back as much as I thought it was going to. And obviously that's one of the reasons that this is so small and so light. So sacrificing the f8 aperture to get something this small is definitely worth it, guys. It's so easy to handhold and shoot and just be really stable. And the fact that that's mixed with such good autofocus and such good stabilization, and the fact that the R6 also is giving you more stabilization with the IBIS mixed with this lens, it just makes getting the shot so easy. And if you held off getting this lens because it's really not that impressive, definitely give it a try, because I think it might surprise you like it did me. And it's honestly one of my favorite lenses now. Another really cool thing about the Canon RF 100 to 400 millimeter lens is that you get like quasi macro shots out of it. When I was shooting butterflies at this butterfly garden, I was getting really, really sharp, really nice close-up shots. Now, they're not real macro shots, it's not one-to-one, but it's close enough that it kind of adds to the versatility of this lens, because even though you may not be able to zoom wider than 100 millimeters, the ability to get that close to your subject does make it feel more versatile when you're just using it as your one-and-done lens. Canon's really been impressing me with the lower RF lenses that they've been coming out with. I did the same thing with the Canon RF 24 to 240 millimeter lens, where I didn't pick that up and I wasn't excited about it at all when I initially saw the specs of it. When I did eventually pick that lens up and I did use it, it impressed me with the image quality, the stabilization, and the autofocus, the overall build. Everything about the lens I honestly just loved, even though when I saw it on paper, it didn't get me excited. And that's exactly how I feel about the Canon RF 100 to 400. The specs on it, not that impressive. When you actually use this thing in the real world, this lens is super impressive. The real magic of this lens comes from the fact that it is just so light and so easy to carry around. Like, I throw this on to my R6, and I basically just rely on just this lens. I was having so much fun just running around and just photographing this juvenile eagle, and then we ended up at this other park that was a few miles away, and I got some really nice in-flight shots of this blue heron. I was just having so much fun, and it was just not a struggle to carry around what I was shooting with anymore. The R6 and the RF 100 to 400 millimeter make such a small, compact, little build that gives me the versatility to actually get shots like this, and I'm loving it. It's honestly the best wildlife setup that I've come across. I wouldn't want to really go to a heavier lens because I just wouldn't want to sacrifice the fact that I can move around and that I'm not like having my shoulder cramp up and hurt after an hour or so of shooting. I like hiking, I like moving, and for that I think that there's not really anything that I would rather have than this lens on my camera. The image quality is so good, the autofocus is so good. I really love doing video. It's very, very good at doing that. If there was one criticism that I was going to levy at this lens, and I don't know if it's the lens's fault or if it's the IBIS from my Canon R6, but usually it works very good, very smoothly when I'm recording video. But one thing that I have noticed is that it'll be really, really smooth, and then the IBIS seems to kick in and it does this little kind of wobble thing. And if I kind of pan a little bit, it seems to go away. It's kind of like when I try to be perfectly still, but I still have stabilization running. Most of the time, like I said, it's fine and it's totally smooth and it's helping me. But once in a while, it seems to kick into this mode where it shakes or jellos back and forth on me. And I notice it, routinely. It happens over and over again. It's intermittent, but it does happen, so that's the one thing that I've noticed when I'm recording video with it. The other thing that I've had trouble with, I don't think it's the lens's fault. I use variable ND filters coming from Gobe or now Earth, and when I put it on here, it focuses up to 300 millimeters. When I fully extend out to 400 millimeters, I cannot focus with my ND filter on there. And I know it's not the ND filter because if I put it on my 100 millimeter macro, which is the same filter size, 67 millimeters, it works perfectly. So it's not the filter, and it's a perplexing thing. If anybody out there that's watching this might know or have run into the same issue, I'm not sure why it's doing that. Like I said, it will focus up to the 300 millimeter point, but anything past that, it just will not focus to tack sharp. It'll still focus, it'll still say it's locking on, but it's not getting tack sharp focus for some reason. The ND filter is the issue because once I pop it off, then the lens is working fine after that. And again, it does work at wider focal lengths, just not past around 300, somewhere around there. I was all excited that I got all of the variable ND filters for the right filter size for each one of my RF lenses that I use now. And of course, the one had to give me an issue on the 100 to 400 millimeter lens. So it's not a big issue. Again, I don't think it's even the lens's fault, but it is something that I ran into when using it for video. Again, if there is anybody out there watching that has run into the same issue or knows what's happening or could possibly help me out with a solution, I'd love to see that in the comments, guys. They did not include a hood for this lens, but I did get a cheap one for, I think it was $15 from JJC. Works perfectly. Actually love this little thing. Always use it. Locks right on. It even has a little button that locks it on, so if you want to take it off, you press it, boom, you're good to go. Honestly, guys, if you have a Canon R6, now we have animal tracking mixed with the nano USM technology that you're getting inside of this lens. It's like the cheat code for wildlife. I'm telling you, you almost feel like you're cheating. 9 times out of 10, you're just gonna press down your tracking button. Dual back button autofocus is also a really big help when it comes to shooting wildlife. I have a setup video for that for your R6 or your R7. So check those videos out. They can help a lot if you're going to use this combination. So if you're on the fence about it, just pick it up. That's my recommendation. I think you're going to be really happy that you did. Anyway, guys, I hope that this video helped you out a little bit, and if it did, go below, subscribe, click that notification bell, and I'll see you on my next video.